It's the worst of the CBC for March 9th, 2020, the show where I watch the CBC so you don't have to. All right, today it's going to be a bit more focused. I mean, the CBC is basically, it's spending a lot of time on the coronavirus, and again, viruses are real. Wash your hands. Don't lick the subway. So there you go. That's what I'll tell you to do, and just stop licking things in public. There you go. The thing I want to focus on today is the Liberals just released a bill, and they covered this, banning conversion therapy in Canada. And this bill, the way it's designed, this is the perfect example of sort of the modern transgender movement clashing with the classical gay rights movement, and then all of that, of course, clashing with reality. So my problem with the LGBTQ movement is the fact that the T and the Q are combined with the LGB, and when you take the radical T rhetoric and the radical Q rhetoric, both of them contradict each other, yet both of them are legally binding. And this gets into the ban here on conversion therapy. So conversion therapy, when we think of it like as some evil pastor trying to pray the gay out of a bunch of gays and getting abusive at times, either mentally or physically, and that's banned. So That I'm against. I don't think you can change their sexuality by praying it away. I don't think these programs have ever shown to have been effective. Now, we can argue the nature-nurture element of homosexuality, but you cannot argue that there is no nature element, really. And by the same thing, you could also say that you can't argue there is no nurture element. But putting that aside, they've put into this also gender identity. So here's the whole problem. Is we're banning conversion therapy for gender identity, which means whenever a patient in Canada comes in, if I come in and say, I'm a girl, you telling me, well, you might be a boy, this is now abusive. Right? This is the same thing as you being an evil priest and abusing a homosexual man. This is the same thing if you're just a doctor and you say, well, I don't agree that this child is a girl, it's clearly a boy. So here's the whole problem summed up, is because there is some very legitimate reasons why society doesn't want conversion therapy. But what the trans rights movement is doing is it's taking a very legitimate complaint, which is conversion therapy, something that we all think is bad. And when we think of it just to what they did to gay men or lesbians. And we want to ban that because the logic behind it is, well, you can't change someone's sexual proclivity, sexual expression, whatever it is. I can't get the term. But you can't change if someone's gay or straight, right? This is the whole basis of banning conversion therapy, right? Is that you can't change someone's sexuality, right? If they're gay, they're gay. They're lesbian, they're straight, they're straight, right? I'm straight. You might be straight. How much therapy could I give you before we turn each other gay? That's the argument, okay? It's unchangeable. However, in order to say then gender identity is part of it, you have to say the reason why conversion therapy doesn't work is because gender identity is unchangeable. But if gender identity is unchangeable, then how could people born male identify as female, right? The whole transgender argument is that gender is some way fluid, that it is a choice, right? So the reason why there's religious conversion therapy on gays is you have the religious community arguing that this is really a choice, right? And this is conservative candidates get disqualified from the race if they say there's a choice in homosexuality. Okay, but now you're saying, okay, the reason we're banning conversion therapy is because there is no choice. Okay, I'm fine with that argument, but then not expanding that to gender identity, putting it in the same but saying, but gender identity is a choice, right? So you see how this law already contradicts itself and already gets Orwellian. So you have a point where most of the community, when they hear conversion therapy, they think, oh, evil religious nuts trying to turn gay people straight, which doesn't work. However, we have the same thing. It also applies to trying to turn men into women and women into men, right? You can't. So we have a situation here where you're a 17-year-old homosexual boy, man. Your parents send you into gender conversion therapy. They want to pray the gay out of you. You're in this horribly abusive system with all these other people, and they're trying to beat you and whatever. That's conversion therapy. It's mentally. It costs you tens of thousands of dollars in therapy down the line. Okay, that's bad. We all sue that, and we call that conversion therapy. However, we are literally equating it now in this law to a doctor saying to an 11-year-old girl who has crazy parents, no, you're not a boy, you might be a girl. Or we don't know. Or I'm not ready to operate on you now. Right? This is now the same type of abuse. Not chopping a child. We might run into a scenario where if I don't chop off a child's genitals and then pump them full of experimental hormones, I will be considered the same legally as a crazy religious fanatic who is abusing gay men. This is the problem with this. And they had a trans person get up there and speak after the law was made. They had a trans person and a gay person. The first person was trans. And they got up there and they couldn't even speak and articulate. Like this, I had a speech prepared, but I can't even do it now. I can't even do the speech. I can't say what I prepared. Like, I looked at this bill. It's not enough. It wouldn't to save me. And then this person goes on about how the type of abuse they suffered was sort of talk therapy. Right, so the abuse that this trans person suffered was it's clearly a man says they're a woman, and then a therapist said, no, you might be a man. There's other ways to deal with it. Talk therapy. Tried to talk them out of converting. This was abuse. This was unfathomable. They couldn't even talk about it. Couldn't even bring themselves, and walked away dramatically. Then a gay person got up there, and they were pretty coherent. And they said, listen, I was a survivor of conversion therapy. This is what happened, right? I actually wasn't gay. I was part of this group. I was ashamed. Like, they had a real story, and they seemed human and appreciative, right? And the trans person was just going crazy, making up, talk therapy. Someone talked to me and said I might not be a man or a woman. So this is really pushing the Canadian government to a position where there's going to be court cases in the near future where people are going to sue the medical system saying, you didn't even allow the doctor to try and talk me out of this, and now I'm sterilized, now I've been mutilated, I've lost my... Like, what type of crazy society are we going into? And for a fact that the NDP and the Liberals are going to try and push this through as quick as possible, like Bill 616, and any type of amendment to this bill to just clarify some of the language to make this less Orwellian will be treated as transphobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitic. Like, it will be all the phobias and racisms rolled up into one. If you even try and change any of the obviously Orwellian language that's going to come in this stupid law. So... And I'll just relate it again to the media, is my problem with the media is when they're saying, what's the opposition to this, right? They didn't quote anything I said. They said, there's some Christian groups. They found some Christian groups who still want to try and convert gays. So they completely left out the criticism to the trans stuff. And they just pretended that there's a couple of radical Christians, which I'm sure there are some Christian people who still want to believe in or still want the religious freedom to try conversion therapy. Like, I also understand that argument. But the bigger argument is actually the trans thing not being the same as gay. And they completely ignore that argument. They just make it seem like only people opposed to this new bill are religious fanatics. And that's how they're trying to play it. And it's so obviously divisive. It's so obviously false. It's malicious interpretation of a bill for the purpose of dividing people under the guise of human rights. It's everything I hate about the modern left and the media. So that's it for today's episode. We'll give it an 8 out of 10 on the Rosemary Barden scale, and I'll see everyone tomorrow.